All right, so this is the second part of the video. We're going to talk about Japan, and then we're going to start talking about the Islamic world, and we are going to finish up with the Islamic world in a third part of the video, and then when I return on Wednesday, we will discuss Europe. All right, here we go. Japan, like China, laid many political and cultural foundations for its later development in the 3 centuries between 1000 and 1300. So I hope you can see that this whole week is 1000 to 1300. Not only did its leaders distance themselves from Chinese influences, but they also developed a strong sense of their island's distinctive identity. Even so, the long-standing dominance of Chinese ways remained apparent at virtually every level of Japanese society, and was most pronounced at the imperial court in the capital city of Heian, present-day Kyoto. The city itself, founded in 795 CE, was modeled after the former Tang Chinese capital of Chang'an. Outside Kyoto, however, a less China-centered way of life existed and began to impose itself on the center. Here, local notables, mainly military leaders and large landowners, began to challenge the imperial court for dominance. These military adventurers, nevertheless, elected to keep the Japanese emperors and their court at Kyoto in office while stripping them of real power at the same time. Japan continued to have an emperor residing at the imperial city of Kyoto right down to 1868, when the Meiji restoration took place. The emergence of these military marked the arrival of a new important social group in Japanese society, the warriors or samurai. In lightweight leather armor, these expert horsemen defended their private estates with remarkable long-range bowmanship and superbly crafted single-edged long steel swords, lethal for close combat in warfare. The warriors also brought an idealization of their martial ethics with an emphasis on loyalty, self-discipline, and a simple life tied to the land, which helped to shape Japanese society until recent times. So Southeast Asia now. So in Southeast Asia, like India, now became a crossroads of Afroeurasian influences. Its sparse population of probably around 10 million in 1000 CE, tiny compared to that of China and India, right, was not immune to the foreign influences riding the sea lanes into the archipelago. The Malay Peninsula became home to many trading ports and stopovers for traders shuttling between India and China because it connected the Bay of Bengal and the Indian Ocean with the South China Sea. Indian influence had been prominent both on the Asian mainland and in island portions of Southeast Asia since 800 CE. But Islamic expansion into the islands after 1200 gradually superseded these influences. Only Bali and a few other islands far to the east of Malaya preserved their Brahmanic Vedic religious origins. Try saying that 5 times fast. Don't really try, but that's the tough one. Elsewhere in Java and Sumatra, Islam became the dominant religion. In Vietnam and northern portions of mainland Southeast Asia, Chinese cultural influences and northern schools of Mahayana Buddhism were especially prominent. During this period, Cambodian, Burmese, and Thai peoples founded powerful mixed polities along the Mekong, Salween, Chao Phraya, and Irrawaddy river basins of the Asian mainland. Important Vedic and Buddhist kingdoms emerged here as political buffers between the strong states in China and India and brought stability and further commercial prosperity to the region. All right, so now we're going to move over to the Islamic world again. Here we go. While the number of Muslim traders began to increase in commercial hubs from the Mediterranean to the South China Sea, it was not until the 9th and 10th centuries CE that Muslims became a majority within their own Abbasid Empire, right? We talked about this a couple weeks ago, or last week, right? So remember, those living, I'm just going to briefly summarize this, those living under Muslim rule who were not Muslim had to pay a tax. And we discussed the document. There was religious toleration, but there wasn't exactly religious freedom, like publicly practicing religion for other groups like Christians. That was that document we discussed, right? So, while tolerant, Islam was an expansionist, universalizing faith. Intense proselytizing, especially by Sufi merchants, we're going to talk about Sufism here in a minute, carried the sacred word to new frontiers and, in the process, reinforced the spread of Islamic institutions that supported commercial exchange. Whereas Western Europe experienced a climatic dark age, there's climate again, between 500 and 900 CE, severe conditions, freezing temperatures, and lack of rainfall afflicted the eastern Mediterranean and the Islamic lands of Mesopotamia, the Iranian plateau, and the steppe region of Central Asia in the late 11th and 12th centuries. The Nile's low water levels devastated Egypt, the breadbasket for much of the area. No less than 1/4 of the summer floods that normally brought sediment-enriching deposits to Egypt's soils and guaranteed abundant harvests were utter failures in this period. Turkish nomadic pastoralists poured out of the steppe lands of Central Asia, driven by drought, in search of better lands, wreaking political and economic havoc everywhere they invaded. The Seljuk Turks entered the Iranian plateau in 1029, bringing an end to the magnificent cultural flourishing of the first half of the 11th century. Seljuk warriors invaded Baghdad in 1055, establishing a nomadic state in Mesopotamia over a once powerful Abbasid state that now lacked the resources to defend its lands and its peoples, weakened by famines and pestilence. The invaders destroyed institutions of learning and public libraries and looted the region's antiquities. Nor was the Byzantine Empire spared. Constantinople, with a population of 1 million, saw its numbers dwindle to 200,000 by the late 11th century, yet it was still Europe's largest city. These environmental changes also caused Islam's political institutions to fragment, just when it appeared that Shi'ism would be the vehicle for uniting the Islamic world. The Fatimid Shiites had established their authority over Egypt and much of North Africa, and the Abbasid state in Baghdad was controlled by a Shiite family, the Buyids. Each group created universities in Cairo and Baghdad, respectively, ensuring that leading centers of higher learning were Shiite. But divisions also sapped Shi'ism, as Sunni Muslims began to challenge Shiite power and establish their own strongholds. In Baghdad, the Buyid family surrendered to a group of Sunni strongmen in 1055. A century later, the last one of the Shiite Fatimid rulers gave way to a new Sunni regime in Egypt, so things changed very quickly. The new strongmen were mainly Turks. Their people had been migrating into the Islamic heartland from the Asian steppes since the 8th century CE, bringing superior military skills and an intense devotion to Sunni Islam. Once established in Baghdad, they found outposts in Syria and Palestine, and then moved into Anatolia after defeating Byzantine forces in 1071. But this Turkish state also crumbled as tribesmen quarreled for preeminence. By the 13th century, the Islamic heartland had fractured into 3 regions. In the east, it was Central Asia, Iran, and eastern Iraq, the remnants of the old Abbasid state preserved. Caliphs succeeded one another, still claiming to speak for all of Islam, yet deferring to their Turkish military commanders. In the core of the Islamic world, Egypt, Syria, and the Arabian Peninsula, where Arabic was the primary tongue, military men of non-Arab origin held the reins of power. Farther west in North Africa, Arab rulers prevailed, but the influence of Berbers, some from the northern Sahara, was extensive. Islam was a vibrant faith, but its political systems were splintered. So, in the third part and final part of the lecture video, I'm going to talk about Sufism. So, be ready for that.